feeling proud after completing a part of a personal project, or noticing that a new habit has boosted your energy can help you see quick changes in your surroundings. Maybe your workspace is neater, or your daily routine feels more relaxed because you tackled tasks earlier in the week. By spotting these short-term wins, you fuel a consistent drive to keep moving forward, even when the final goal seems far away. Guilt can act as a sneaky barrier, disguising itself as motivation but often leading to inaction. If you constantly criticize yourself for not doing more, you might fall into a negative cycle, feeling too defeated to make any progress. A gentler yet firm approach, acknowledging your desire to improve without harsh self-judgment, allows for healthier motivation. You can think, "I didn't achieve everything today, but tomorrow is a new chance," instead of, "See, I always fail, so why bother?" This balanced perspective lets you acknowledge your shortcomings without letting them define you, ultimately breaking the chains of inertia that guilt often creates. Your environment can be shaped to support action. For example, if you want to read more, placing a book in a visible spot can remove the excuse of not having reading material nearby. If your goal is to exercise daily, putting workout clothes where you'll see them first thing in the morning can eliminate the excuse of forgetting to prepare. By making the path to your priority as smooth as possible, you reduce the small barriers that feed excuses. Even labeling certain items or areas with short reminders can anchor your intentions, shaping your world to prompt action at the right times. Trying new methods for repeated tasks can combat boredom, which can become an excuse itself. You might notice that a daily routine feels stale and start thinking it's too dull to continue. By slightly altering your approach, maybe changing the order of tasks or using a timer, you keep your mind engaged and less likely to drift. Small tweaks can reinvigorate the process, reminding you that execution doesn't have to be a chore. Each variation can offer insights on how to refine your system further, making the entire workflow more resilient against boredom-fueled excuses. Emotional triggers often hide behind last-minute excuses. If you notice a pattern, like feeling anxious and suddenly needing to reorganize your desk, it's worth addressing that emotion directly instead of avoiding it. Pause to acknowledge the anxiety and remind yourself of the bigger purpose. By intentionally sitting with the feeling for a moment, you stop allowing it to redirect your time. This acknowledgement, followed by a small step of action, reconditions your reaction to stress, making it a signal to move forward rather than retreat. Setting micro-deadlines is another effective tool for overcoming the illusion of having enough time. When you tell yourself you'll finish a task sometime before the end of the week, you open the door for endless postponement. Instead, decide to finish one key component by a specific time, like Wednesday at noon. That specificity forces you to plan your hours leading up to the deadline, disarming the excuse that you have too many other things to do or that the final deadline is still far away. Each mini target hit during the week builds into a tangible sense of progress, reducing typical reasons for delay. Accountability can be doubled by offering to show evidence of your work. For example, you might agree to show your mentor or friend a draft, video recording, or completed task list. Knowing you'll have to present proof can focus your mind, shutting down the convenience of thinking no one will notice if you skip it. This strategy is powerful because it turns intangible promises into visible results. If you struggle with consistent follow-through, this layer of external verification often tips the scale in favor of doing rather than waiting. Time blocking your calendar can further repel excuses. You set aside a specific time slot for a chosen activity rather than vaguely saying you'll get it done today. When that block arrives, you treat it as seriously as any other appointment. If an excuse pops up, like not being in the mood, you remind yourself that this is a scheduled commitment, akin to a meeting you wouldn't randomly skip without good reason. This approach rearranges your mental priorities. If you've pre-decided that a certain hour belongs to your project, you refrain from giving that hour away to lesser tasks or fleeting impulses. Internalizing the phrase "done is better than perfect" can free you from pausing a task mid-stride just because it won't meet some lofty standard right away. Perfectionism often does more to stall execution than to enhance quality. If you allow yourself to complete a rough version, knowing you can improve it later, you bypass the mental friction that arises when things aren't perfect. This acceptance of imperfection can counter the common excuse that you're not ready or it won't be good enough yet, reaffirming that an imperfect action typically surpasses perfect inaction. Positive self-talk counters the negative spiral that leads to procrastination. Each time your mind conjures reasons to stall, you can reframe obstacles as opportunities to develop resilience or creativity. This approach redirects your focus away from fear or hesitation and anchors it in the potential for growth. When you catch yourself thinking you can't start because you're not fully prepared, you respond with, "I'll become more prepared by doing the initial steps." Over time, these statements become your default internal responses, quieting the nagging voice that seeks a rationale for inaction. That shift from negative self-talk to constructive, optimistic language can be subtle at first, but can dramatically shorten the gap between thinking about a goal and working on it. Changing your environment means reducing friction points that let you slip back into passivity. Small environmental tweaks may seem minor, but they create a physical structure that supports follow-through rather than excuses. You remove or reduce the triggers that typically lure you into explaining away why you can't focus just yet. Overcoming indecision can be crucial when it forms the root of your delays. You might stall because you're unsure which project or method to pursue. In those cases, setting a brief window to decide can help. You tell yourself, "Sanai will spend the next 10 minutes weighing the options, and then I will pick one and move forward." By placing a limit on the decision phase, you ensure it doesn't extend indefinitely under the guise of seeking clarity. Often, once you commit to a course, even if it's not guaranteed to be perfect, you find reasons to refine and make it work, rather than continuing to circle around in mental debate. Practice is vital. Transforming from a mindset that accepts excuses to one that prioritizes action isn't done through willpower alone. It's a daily rehearsal of making small, consistent choices that break the old pattern. You notice each time you're about to rationalize a delay and counteract it with a simple step forward. At first, it may feel forced or mechanical, but as you log more instances of bypassing the easy way out, you reinforce a new default behavior. When faced with tension or uncertainty, you lean toward action. This layering of experiences, where you repeatedly confirm that action brings results, gradually cements a habit. By the time a week passes, you may be surprised at how much you've accomplished and how little those old justifications cross your mind. Failure ceases to be frightening once you view it as a temporary setback rather than a defining event. Sometimes the fear of failure underwrites all your excuses, suggesting that it's safer not to try than to risk a flawed outcome. But consistent action teaches a different lesson. You can recover from mistakes, learn something valuable, and often come back stronger. That understanding reduces the emotional weight of potential failure, making the leap to execution easier to take. Rather than fixating on worst-case scenarios, you explore the possibilities that open up once you stop stalling. Modeling your routines after someone you admire can lessen your reliance on excuses. If a friend, mentor, or someone else has a pattern of early morning productivity, clear goal setting, or daily achievements, try adopting a similar schedule or approach for a short trial period. The fresh structure can jolt you out of your comfort zone, demonstrating that you can adapt to new patterns and thrive. While you'll eventually tailor these habits to suit your lifestyle, the act of mirroring someone successful can break years of inertia in just a few days, proving to yourself that alternative methods are feasible if you're committed enough to try them. Communicating your objectives to key people in your life, such as family members, roommates, or close colleagues, reduces friction. If they know you're dedicating certain hours to a major project or skill, they're less likely to interrupt you with minor requests, which often become handy excuses to shift focus. This transparency about your ambition not only curtails potential disruptions, but highlights the significance of what you're doing. Whether they actively support you or simply refrain from adding extra demands, you create an external environment that respects your plan. This environment acts as a second layer of reinforcement, reducing the temptations to devolve under the banner of being too busy with other tasks. Coordinating your tasks in a logical sequence counters the excuse that you're waiting on something else. Instead of hitting a standstill if a particular resource or response is pending, you shift to another part of the project or a parallel objective you can progress on. This pivot keeps you occupied with productive work rather than stagnating. You learn to juggle multiple strands responsibly, ensuring that each day sees forward movement on at least one front. By viewing your goals as interconnected steps rather than a linear chain, you mitigate the excuse that you're stuck because one piece is on hold. Mental rehearsal of your next day's plan can make getting started smoother. Before going to bed, you run through which tasks you'll tackle first, which resources you need at hand, and the rough time frame for each. This quick mental preview reduces morning indecision. By the time you wake up, you've already mapped out your initial actions. Excuses often creep in during that morning lull, whispering that you're still tired or that some other errand should take priority. But if you visualized your day in advance, you've effectively preempted that swirl of indecision, leaving less room for avoidance. At times, you might notice you're stuck in a specific mental loop, cycling through the same reasons for not progressing. Writing down each excuse, actually listing them on paper, lets you see how repetitive they can be. Next to each one, you can jot down a counter strategy. If you always claim you're too exhausted after work, you can vow to do a 15-minute transition activity that revitalizes you, like a brisk walk or a short rest, before diving into your project. Over time, this reference sheet becomes a personal manual for dismantling your typical escape routes. Knowing you have a pre-planned response to each common excuse deflates their potency when they inevitably pop up. Negative peer influence is another subtle anchor that can keep you stuck in stalling. If those around you constantly downplay ambition or emphasize reasons not to do things, you might adopt that mindset unconsciously. Spotting this pattern helps you correct it by seeking out or spending more time with people who respect the hustle, who talk about potential solutions rather than reeling off snags. While you can't always choose your entire environment, you can selectively limit how much you internalize naysayers' views. Affirming your own goals in the presence of that negativity can be challenging at first, but it eventually solidifies your personal stance on taking action. Sometimes clarifying your end goal can end the confusion that spawns excuses. If you keep your aspirations too vague, like wanting to be successful, you never specify what success entails, making it easy to stall. Translating that dream into a defined target, such as wanting to produce a working draft of your plan within 3 months, gives you a focal point. Then every day, you measure your actions against that tangible objective. If you find yourself drifting, you recall the specifics, and aiming to have these sections written by the end of next week. That clarity stands in stark contrast to indefinite goals, where you can always argue there's time later. If you're grappling with several potential goals, picking one that feels most relevant for the next few days can slice through the trap of trying to do everything at once. A scattered approach, where you dabble in multiple ideas without real traction, makes it easy to declare yourself too overloaded to commit. By focusing on a single priority, maybe it's finishing that overdue assignment or testing a skill you've been curious about, you channel your attention. This kind of short, intense engagement can yield a burst of progress, reaffirming that when you narrow your scope, you minimize excuses. You'll often find that completing or significantly advancing one item jumpstarts enthusiasm for tackling the next. A tolerance for uncertainty helps neutralize excuses. You might be waiting for the perfect plan or a guarantee of success, but action typically unfolds in partial clarity. You accept that some questions remain unanswered and that you may adjust on the fly. Embracing that incomplete knowledge is liberating. You no longer need every detail before making a move. Instead, you see the path as something that emerges under your feet as you walk. By adopting this perspective, you remove the need more certainty rationale and replace it with the readiness to figure things out along the way. Knowing your typical energy dips can help you plan around them rather than letting them spawn excuses. If you always hit a slump mid-afternoon, schedule a less demanding or more routine task then, reserving your best mental hours for complex or creative endeavors. This approach disarms the excuse that you're too tired to do valuable work because you're now working with your natural rhythms instead of fighting them. Over time, you get a better sense of how to slot each type of activity, so the times you typically zone out become an opportunity for simpler, autopilot tasks or brief rest. By day's end, you've done more with fewer feelings of burnout. You might consider pairing an enjoyable activity with a must-do task that tempts you to stall. If you dread data entry, you could allow yourself to listen to a favorite music album only during that task. This technique merges pleasure with effort, creating a small burst of positive association. It doesn't trivialize the work, rather it counters the instinct to avoid it. Over multiple repetitions, your brain starts to see that chore less as a dreaded slot and more as a window of mild enjoyment, thereby reducing the mental friction behind typical excuses. Balancing big picture planning with immediate, actionable steps keeps you from defaulting to conceptual daydreams. If you dwell too long on visions of ultimate success, like writing that best-selling novel or launching a groundbreaking venture, you might avoid the gritty small tasks that move you forward. Constructing a roadmap where the end goal stands up front, but the week-by-week actions are clearly laid out, turns each day into a mission rather than a mental fantasy. You see the connection between finishing today's draft chapter and your broader ambition. This structure undercuts all the reasons to postpone because the path is spelled out in real, doable increments. Keeping a sense of humor about minor stumbles can dispel tension that might otherwise become a reason to bail. If you slip up, maybe you overslept or forgot to do a smaller task, laughing at the mishap and resetting your intention preserves momentum better than spiraling into self-criticism. Humor and patience act as buffers against the heaviness of perceived failure, reminding you that a single error needn't derail the entire effort. It's a quick mental reset button. Curiosity about how you might improve transforms frustration into fuel. Rather than thinking, I can't believe I still haven't finished this, you adopt, I wonder which part of my process I can tweak to speed this up. Shifting from blame to curiosity stimulates problem solving, revealing new tactics or methods that can dissolve the blocks you once labeled as excuses. A curious mindset is playful, less rigid about immediate perfection, more open to trial and error. By asking, what can I learn from this delay? You find insights that help you refine your approach. Performance rituals can ease you past the threshold where excuses thrive. Maybe you have a small routine like lighting a candle, doing a brief stretch, or clearing your desk that signals it's time to work. This physical or sensory cue can override internal hesitation. As your body comes to associate that ritual with immediate focus, you create a conditioned response. Once the ritual starts, so does productive action, leaving little room for last-second justifications not to begin. If you find yourself sliding into older, excuse-laden patterns, step back and reevaluate. Perhaps you need to shake up your approach, adjust the complexity of tasks, reassign daily time slots, or revisit your initial reasoning for tackling the goal. This re-evaluation is itself a form of action. Instead of ignoring the slump, you address it head-on. That willingness to pivot keeps you from languishing in a cycle of partial effort followed by rationalized surrender. Each recalibration reaffirms that you're committed to finding solutions rather than letting obstacles slide you back into inaction. When progress stalls for days, it's a clear sign that something needs to change. It's useful to conduct a brief review. Ask yourself, when did things start to unravel and what caused it? Identifying the turning point, like a discouraging remark or an unexpected personal issue, gives you a clear path for your next steps. You might realize you need to add more buffer time to your schedule when external demands surge, or find ways to boost your morale. This analytical approach stops the slump from worsening after receiving critical feedback. Scaling as you troubleshoot your workflow, much like fixing a system glitch, you prevent issues from lingering. Matching your ambition to your current capacity is crucial. If your vision far exceeds your available time or energy, the gap can lead to endless excuses. For instance, you might aim to build a large new enterprise, but only have weekends free. Instead of giving up, refine your scope for now, focusing on a smaller initial version. This measured approach avoids the all-or-nothing mindset. You progress at a manageable scale, gaining momentum that might one day allow you to expand your vision. A forward-looking approach is strengthened by celebrating each small victory. Some people keep a victory list at the end of each day, including minor achievements like sending an important email or completing a short training module. These daily reflections remind you that you are taking action, making excuses like, I never get anywhere, less credible. Your mind struggles to justify a narrative of failure when faced with tangible daily proof. Instead, you see visible evidence of consistent effort, reinforcing the cycle of action. As you progress, your identity shifts from a dreamer to a doer. This shift can be subtle but profound. Previously, you might have comforted yourself with the idea of big plans, even though you rarely started them. Now, you find satisfaction in checking off items, completing project phases, and learning from small experiments. The pride of real execution replaces the hollow comfort of indefinite planning. Each passing week sees you further along, and each step dispels the notion that you need more excuses. Consistency. As you accumulate these steady victories day by day, you reinforce a mindset that values consistent effort over sporadic bursts of inspiration. By continuing to show up, whether you feel fully energized or just moderately so, you prove to yourself that your productivity isn't dictated by mood or circumstance. This reliability undercuts another common excuse, the idea that you can't act when you're not in an ideal headspace. In reality, many of the world's most accomplished figures move forward despite feeling less than perfect on countless occasions. The common thread is their refusal to let a passing emotional state dictate whether or not to engage with their ambitions. An interesting effect of consistent action is that it often inspires those around you. When friends or colleagues see that you no longer deflect tasks or talk endlessly about possibilities without follow-through, they might become curious about your methods. This can spark conversations where you share tips like setting micro-deadlines, creating a routine, or adopting a quick daily reflection. Before long, you may find yourself leading informal accountability groups or simply exchanging daily progress updates. This mutual support can further drive your own consistency. You don't want to let others down, and their visible growth fuels you too. One challenge that often resurfaces is dealing with repetitive tasks that lose novelty over time. In these instances, you can shift from seeking excitement to focusing on purpose. You might say, "This routine paperwork feeds into a bigger project that matters, so I'll treat it with care." Or, closing out these small tasks frees my schedule for more creative pursuits. By reconnecting a mundane responsibility to the overall vision, you extinguish the excuse that it's too boring to handle. You accept that not every step glitters, but each one builds the ground on which your achievements rest. Seeing progression in black and white can hush your internal naysayer. If you maintain a list of completed tasks or a simple tracker marking each day you tackled your priorities, your mind has tangible proof of forward motion. When you start to murmur, "I haven't really gotten anywhere," you can glance at that record and see the contrary evidence. This approach can seem almost too simple, but it effectively dispels illusions that nothing has changed, especially on days when motivation dips. It helps you identify patterns, like which days of the week you're most productive, and how often you're letting trivial errands encroach upon your main work. Breaking tasks into smaller increments soothes the fear that everything must be done in a massive, uninterrupted block. Suppose you want to craft an in-depth proposal but only have short windows throughout your week. Dividing the proposal into research, outlining, drafting, and revising ensures each piece fits into a briefer time slot. You no longer rely on the excuse that a 3-hour chunk is unavailable. Instead, you deploy the time you do have, steadily chipping away until the proposal stands complete. This method reveals how many so-called time constraints are actually illusions, vanishing when you approach your goal in a flexible manner. Another technique is harnessing a quick start rule. Whenever you catch yourself hesitating, commit to just 5 minutes of engagement with the task. After that, if you truly wish to stop, you can. Most often, once the 5 minutes pass, you're already immersed enough to continue. This technique disempowers the excuse, "I'm not in the mood to begin," because 5 minutes feels so non-threatening that it's hard to justify not doing it at all. Reevaluate your schedule, essentially. You trick your inertia into motion, and once motion starts, the mind usually decides to keep going. If juggling multiple responsibilities is your main excuse, you can reevaluate your overall schedule. You may discover you're overcommitting to optional events or ignoring simpler ways to manage daily tasks like cooking or errands. Freeing up even a single hour a day by reorganizing chores or cutting back on excessive breaks can be enough to work steadily on your priority goal. The difference between 0 hours and 1 hour per day is monumental over the course of a week. Instead of letting the claim, "I have no time," dominate, you find pockets of time that were once lost to unplanned distractions. Establishing an end-of-day review can safeguard you from drifting through the week with minimal progress. Each night, you spend a few minutes noting what you tackled, what remains, and how you plan to address it tomorrow. Doing so closes the loop on each day with a sense of ownership. If you wasted the day on excuses, this review stares you in the face, prompting you to think, let's not do this again tomorrow." If you use your time well, you get the uplifting sense that you're on track, which fuels further consistency. Engaging with self-imposed or social challenges can ignite drive. You might create a game where you must accomplish a specific milestone each day for a week. If you succeed, you reward yourself with something meaningful, like a leisurely afternoon to read or a small purchase you've been eyeing. This gamified approach transforms tasks from burdens into objectives that let you win daily or weekly. The excitement of tracking these wins can eclipse the usual excuses that aim to delay effort. Identifying a single anchor task for each day can be transformative. An anchor task is the one thing that, if completed, makes you feel the day was worthwhile. By deciding that each day will have an anchor and committing to finishing it, regardless of obstacles, you relegate lesser excuses to the background. You might allow smaller tasks to shift around, but that anchor remains immovable. At first, it might be something small, like contacting a particular client or drafting a short piece. Over time, the anchor task can grow in complexity, reflecting your evolving capacity and confidence. Uncovering the deeper why behind each short-term target bolsters your resilience against doubt. If you've decided to research a certain topic every day this week, ask yourself what overarching objective it serves. Maybe it's fueling a bigger plan that will open professional doors or enrich your expertise in a valuable field. By linking that daily research session to a broader mission, you feel more driven to override excuses. It's hard to rationalize skipping something that's a key puzzle piece in a plan you genuinely care about. Incremental skill building should negativity about your capabilities arise, like thinking you're not smart enough or skilled enough. You can choose incremental skill building as a direct rebuttal to that excuse. If you feel unqualified, Spend half an hour learning or practicing the craft each day, steadily improving. In doing so, you remove the right to say, "Son, I can't do this because I lack skill." Instead, your daily practice demonstrates that you're growing more qualified, even if the pace is gradual. The progress, though small, becomes undeniable proof that your potential is expanding one session at a time. Reflecting on past instances where you conquered a seemingly insurmountable hurdle can re-energize you now. Maybe you recall a situation you managed to resolve, or a goal you reached under even tougher conditions. This memory challenges any current narrative that your circumstances are too restrictive. You've navigated adversity before, so it stands to reason you can do so again. The memory of real accomplishment under pressure is often more compelling than generic motivational phrases because it's based on your personal history. Over time, the shift away from excuses becomes so ingrained that it becomes second nature to spot them and dismiss them quickly. You might still hear the faint echo of, "I'm too tired," or "It won't matter anyway," but it barely resonates. Action has become your default stance, and you trust in the process enough not to sabotage it at the slightest discomfort. Your productivity rises, but beyond that, your sense of self-respect grows as well. You know yourself to be someone who executes on the intentions you set, not just someone who talks about them. If you keep this momentum going for a week, you'll see a tangible difference: completed tasks, newly acquired habits, or at least a notable dent in a bigger project. That difference can be enough to make you realize how close you always were to taking action, if only you hadn't let excuses block the way. Recognizing that you can achieve real changes in such a short span is a spark that can last far beyond 7 days, fueling further growth and propelling you to tackle new challenges with the same sense of readiness. Taking real action this week is less about grand transformations and more about countless small decisions to move forward despite the urge to rationalize a delay. Those moments of choice, when you decide to tackle a challenging task for 10 minutes, to set a micro deadline, or to brush aside doubts, accumulate swiftly. Each tiny step dispels the myth that you lack time, skill, or readiness. As you follow through on even the simplest tasks, you assert that your intentions carry weight, and the usual excuses find less room to take hold. By maintaining a schedule that respects your energy peaks, dedicating short, focused windows to key goals, and adjusting your environment to support progress, you build a self-sustaining cycle where effort feels natural rather than forced. Momentum grows as you see the results. An outline gets completed, a tough conversation finally takes place, or a skill begins to develop noticeably. That forward motion dissolves doubts, revealing that consistent action fuels genuine accomplishments far more effectively than waiting for better conditions ever could. You discover that motivation often follows movement. Once you start, you find you can keep going, and with each day of consistent action, you shift from dreaming of possibilities to living them, forging a life marked by purpose, execution, and the knowledge that excuses no longer stand in your way.